Hey guys, tonight we drift back, far back. You're lying still, breath soft, as you peer through time into a land where trees shed skin, rivers run upside down in the heat, and the animals all seem to have rolled off some divine prankster's sketchpad. This isn't a dream, it's prehistoric Australia. No cities, no metal, no safety net, just red earth, cracking under an indifferent sun, and life forms that look like they were designed during a fever. Now imagine stepping barefoot onto this land. You don't have Google Maps, a hydration pack, or even shoes. You're one of the first humans here. Congratulations. You've just arrived on the most cursed continent Earth has to offer. Giant birds, tall enough to look you in the eye. Snakes that outrun your shadow. A sky that randomly hurls fire. And you? You're trying to make dinner out of a lizard with a stick. Prehistoric Australia was pure nightmare fuel. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake, post your location and the time you're listening. I love seeing where you're all tuning in from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe open the window for that soft background sound. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're there now. The smell of eucalyptus wafts through dry air. It's 65,000 years ago, maybe more. You tread soft reddish soil, sand particles curling between your toes. The stars above you blaze coldly bright. You're not alone. Others travel with you. The earliest humans to leave Southeast Asia and reach Sahel, the landmass that once connected Australia, New Guinea, and Tasmania in a single unbroken sprawl. There's no bridge, no causeway. You've crossed open sea, maybe on rafts lashed from bamboo and hope, maybe island hopping across now vanished stepping stone lands. Historians still argue whether this was an accidental drift or intentional migration. Either way, you've made it, but so have your problems. The land greets you with a heat that hums in your bones. There's water, but it's hidden. Deep rock pools, sparse billabongs, and salt-tinged creeks that turn bone dry by midday. There's food, but it's stubborn. Roots that bite back, fruits that poison, animals that sprint faster than your best throw. You can't even pronounce what just bit you. A cassowary watches from the underbrush, looking like a turkey cosplaying as a velociraptor. You freeze. Your companions do too. Everyone knows someone who got too close to one of those things. You don't make eye contact. You back away slowly. The insects thrum in alien harmonies. And at night, the desert flips cold. You huddle under kangaroo hides and whisper stories, some born from memory, some just now forming in the dark. They explain the stars, the hills, the ancestors, and the beasts you dare not name. And then you hear it, a rumble in the distance. Not thunder, something walking, heavy, too heavy. You're not imagining it, because somewhere out there is a diprotodon, a wombat the size of a pickup truck. Technically a herbivore, yes, but would you bet your sleep on that? They've been known to charge. You don't have much in the way of weapons. A stick, maybe sharpened. A stone with some edge to it. Fire, if the wind's kind. No bows, no arrows. Not for another 50,000 years. No metal. Not even pottery yet. You're improvising survival. Every footstep leaves a story in the dust. But that dust, it's ancient. Australia has the oldest exposed surfaces on Earth. The soil's so nutrient poor that even the plants look annoyed. You find leaves with edges so sharp they could draw blood. They've adapted. So must you. By day, you move, tracking water, watching clouds for signs of distant storms. At night, you sleep lightly, always aware, always listening. Some nights, the stars swirl in your vision, and your dreams blur with myth. You dream of rainbow serpents carving rivers, of ancestral spirits walking upside down in the sky, of great floods and firestorms, and the songs that hold the land together. But this is no myth. Everything in this ecosystem is calibrated to extremes. The smallest shift can spell catastrophe. One day the plains bloom with life, The next, they vanish in a dust storm that blocks the sun. And still, you endure. You find tubers deep in cracked clay. You learn to read the trees. Which ones leak water? Which ones whisper direction? You dig for grubs. You begin to shape tools from stone, clinking and napping by firelight. Mainstream scholars agree you were here at least 10,000 years before the next great wave of human migration enters Europe. That means you were building oral histories while mammoths still trampled across what would become France. But there's a twist in the timeline. Some evidence hints you may have arrived even earlier than 65,000 years ago. A few rock shelters, like Majed Bebe in the north, show signs of human presence older than many thought possible. Historians still debate the dating techniques, but if true, you might be part of the longest continuous human culture on the planet. You're starting to notice something else. The creatures are off, bigger than expected. Stranger, you're sharing the land with megafauna that don't exist anywhere else. It's not just the Diprotodon, it's marsupial lions, giant goannas, flightless birds taller than NBA players. Each one could crush, claw, or chase you in ways your instincts don't yet comprehend. The stars above remain the only familiar pattern. But the land, it challenges you every day. There are no easy wins, no lucky bounties, just lessons carved from survival. And when the moon glows red and low, you gather with your people. You sing, not for fun, but to remember. Songs map the land, mark the waterholes, pass on survival tips wrapped in rhythm. Each note holds a GPS coordinate. If you know how to listen, you don't sleep deeply. But you do sleep. Eventually, even in this wild cradle of scarcity and danger, your body finds rest. It has to. Because tomorrow, you do it all again. You wake up with sand in your ears and a beetle stubbornly crawling across your neck. Morning in ancient Australia doesn't come gently. It arrives sun first. Blinding, dry, and already hot enough to start baking lizard tracks into stone. You rise slowly, joints stiff from sleeping on the hard-packed earth, and you squint out over the wide, empty horizon. No tents, no caravans, just your clan, your footsteps, and the land stretching endlessly around you like a sunburned riddle. You've timed your arrival here, somehow, with one of Earth's least hospitable climate shifts. Good job. It's the tail end of the last ice age, but ironically, Australia isn't getting glaciers or picturesque mammoths. Nope. What you get is dryness. Vast, relentless dryness. Sahul is transforming into an arid wilderness right before your sunburned eyes. What was once lush is now drying up. Riverbeds become bones. Lakes sigh into salt pans. Historians still argue whether early humans in Australia arrived in staggered waves or one massive pioneering surge. But either way, your ancestors picked a brutal moment to move in. The climate didn't just change, it convulsed. Rain patterns flip, food sources vanish, and the animals, well, they start acting desperate too. Imagine watching your hunting ground turn to dust. Picture a massive inland sea like Lake Mungo slowly shrink and collapse into a ghostly basin. As your clan leader mutters stories about how the fish used to be so thick they flopped into baskets. Now all that flops is the occasional half-dead frog, croaking from a puddle that might not make it past midday. You pass by trees that look like frozen lightning, twisted, pale, leafless. Some hold secrets though. Press the bark just right and you might find hidden moisture or edible grubs. That's knowledge passed down in whispers, not textbooks. You touch a smooth rock face and run your fingers over ochre-stained handprints. They're thousands of years old, and suddenly you realize someone else once stood right here, feeling the same dry wind scrape their skin, wondering what tomorrow would look like. But you can't stay long. Your band is always moving. Resources don't sit still. You head toward what used to be a marshland, now a cracked plain littered with the fossilized shells of giant snails, reminders of when water ruled here. Sometimes you catch sight of an emu darting off, impossibly fast. Other times, just the rustle of something watching you from the scrub. You carry little, a digging stick, a piece of flint worn from sharpening, maybe a fire bundle, a tightly bound clutch of dried grass and ember that, if kept alive, can relight your cooking flames. There's no luxury, not even clay pots yet. Everything you own must survive the journey, just like you. And yet, there's strange beauty in the bleakness. The sky stretches wider here. Colors shift more boldly. At dusk, the land glows with rusty pinks and deep purples that seem to sing with the heat. You learn to see signs, the slight dip in sand that hints at a hidden water source, the twist of a plant that says the soil is still alive beneath. But even as you adapt, the land adapts faster. Many of the megafauna, the big, weird animals that have lived here for millennia, start to vanish. Historians debate fiercely whether it was your hunting, the shifting climate, or some cocktail of both that pushed them over the edge. Maybe the Diprotodon was just too slow. Maybe giant lizards couldn't deal with dry season starvation. Or maybe, just maybe, someone in your clan roasted one and decided they tasted too good. You might never know, but you notice the change. Fewer massive footprints, fewer beasts that could either feed or flatten you. You see bones, bleached and cracking. You feel the weight of extinction, but you press on because what else is there? You follow trails your ancestors etched in song. You sleep in caves that become canvases. You build a storyscape, not just a survival routine. And this isn't some poetic flourish. Your people are inventing what will eventually become the longest continuous cultural tradition on Earth. Songs that mark the stars, stories that explain the ridges, rituals that connect your body to the riverbeds, all while avoiding snakes that could literally kill you by accident. At night, the chill cuts through your skin like fine needles. You huddle around a fire with others, listening to the oldest among you speak of a time when the land was green. You're not sure if it ever really was, but the images soothe you. Maybe it's memory, maybe it's myth. Either way, it helps. One night, someone brings back a weird rock. It's smooth, glassy, almost like it melted and reformed. There's murmuring. Is it lightning stone, fallen from the sky? You're holding a piece of ancient volcanic glass, maybe even obsidian, not native to this area. A trade, perhaps, a gift, a relic of some journey no one remembers. Historians still puzzle over how certain materials made their way across such vast, harsh distances. Maybe your people were more connected than anyone realized. And here you are, holding the mystery in your hand, your thumb running over the edge. It feels sharp. It feels important. It reminds you that even in this harshness, something clever is always being born. Not inventions in the sense of gadgets or wheels, but in the sense of survival. Ingenious, minimalist, stubborn survival. And as the fire crackles, you drift again, halfway between sleep and awareness. You wonder if others across the world live like you. You wonder what ice looks like, or if the stars look different to people far away. Spoiler alert, they don't, but you don't know that yet. You only know this one continent, a furnace full of oddities, both threatening and sacred. And here you are, still breathing, still dreaming, still pushing forward through a time and place where everything wants to kill you. And yet, somehow, nothing has. You roll onto your side. The sand is warm under your blanket of furs. Somewhere in the night, a dingo howls. Not close, but not far either. You close your eyes and hope tomorrow's another lucky day. You wake before the sun, not because you want to, but because the birds demand it. Not the gentle kind, either. These are prehistoric Australian birds, the kind that shriek like broken flutes, who sound like they're mocking your fragile grip on sleep. One particularly enthusiastic kookaburra laughs directly above you, as if to remind you, yes, you're still alive, and yes, this continent still isn't making it easy. You sit up and stretch, spine popping against the chilled morning air. Already, the ground pulses with heat beneath its cold skin. Someone's rekindling the fire. A faint smell of charred roots and smoke snakes through the air, tugging you toward the faint comfort of a shared meal. Maybe roasted yam or dried lizard tail if the hunt was kind yesterday. As the sun rises, gold bleeds across stone and sand, lighting up the world like a kiln. You squint toward the eastern hills and wonder if this will be one of the good days, when nobody falls, nobody starves, nobody gets bitten. You've come to count success in increments that would baffle future civilizations. Not thriving, just not dying. But here's a curveball. Despite the danger, despite the thorns and teeth, you aren't just surviving, you're creating. A short walk away is a rock wall stained in layers of ochre, reds, whites, deep blacks. You approach it like a shrine, because in some ways it is. Here is where the dreaming lives. Figures stretch across the surface, some human, some animal, and some in between. You recognize a turtle, a kangaroo mid-leap, a serpent coiling through a storm. But then there are the ones with radiating lines and wide staring eyes, ancestral beings, part spirit, part stargazer. You run your fingers near but never on the painted surface. It feels alive, like touching it would spark something ancient inside you. That's not superstition, that's memory, that's reverence. These aren't decorations, they're maps, warnings, songs trapped in stone. Mainstream archaeologists will one day date these paintings to over 40,000 years old, possibly more. Some think they could be the world's oldest known depictions of spiritual life. Historians still argue whether the art evolved gradually or if it appeared suddenly with a cultural leap. But one thing is clear. Your people were drawing long before the pyramids, long before the wheel, long before anyone even imagined writing. And these aren't idle doodles. This art records sacred sites, animal migrations, ancestral paths. It's the oldest kind of Google Earth, etched in rock. Every line means something. You don't carry books, you carry songs. You don't draw for fun. You draw to remember. But sometimes, just sometimes, there's room for a little weirdness. You notice a shape among the other figures. It looks out of place. Like a human, but not quite. The proportions are off. The eyes are too round. The limbs stretch impossibly long. The elders don't like to talk about it, and when they do, their voices drop to a whisper. They say those beings came from the sky, or the stars, or maybe from deep underground. Depends who you ask. These days, we'd call them Wandjina, ancestral sky spirits to some Aboriginal groups, eerie space people to fringe theorists on late-night radio. But to you, they're just another warning that the world is bigger than your understanding. You sit there staring, letting the heat climb your back. You wonder, did someone see this being, or dream it, or both? Far off, someone shouts. You snap out of your trance. The hunting group's returned, and they've brought back something big, not Diprotodon big, but close. A Genyornis, a flightless bird, now nearly extinct in your time. Thick legs, massive beak, weighs more than you. It took 5 hunters to pin it down and end it. Now it will feed your group for days, maybe weeks if you dry the meat right. Its feathers shimmer strangely. You reach out to touch one, coarse, like the bristles of a broom. The smell is intense, earthy, slightly sulfurous. You're not sure you'll ever like bird meat again. But here's the dark twist. Some elders are uneasy. They whisper that killing this kind of bird brings misfortune. It's tied to the dreaming, too close to the old spirits. You try not to listen, but you can't help it. The timing is ominous. The skies darken that evening, not with storm, but with smoke. Far away, too far to run, there's a line of orange slicing the horizon. Bushfire. Fire isn't new to this land. In fact, the ecosystem depends on it. Some seeds only sprout after burning. Trees wear fire like perfume. But this blaze feels unnatural. Too big, too fast, too angry. Someone mentions that it's punishment. For the bird, or for the stone you touched, or for something else. Lost in the forgotten lines of an old story. You sleep fitfully that night, the air thick with heat and soot. In your dream, the Wandjina figure walks towards you across a plain of ash, silent, expressionless, staring. You wake with a gasp. Morning comes too soon. The fire spared your camp, but not by much. The hunting party's shaken. One man has burns across his arm, nothing fatal, but angry welts that will scar. Another lost his throwing spear. Everyone's quiet. There's a heaviness now, like the land's mood has shifted, but you know better than to stop. You pack your things, the bird meat, your tools, the ember bundle. You don't speak of the painting, or the fire, or the strange dreams. You just walk. The red earth accepts your footprints without question. Somewhere behind you, smoke still rises. But in front of you, well, that's a mystery waiting to be survived. By now, your feet know this continent better than any map ever will. You move through it the way fish move through water, sometimes gliding, sometimes thrashing, but always immersed. And while the trees don't grow tall here, the stories certainly do. You're walking along an ancient trade path, though you wouldn't call it that. To you, it's simply a line your ancestors sang into existence. You hum it under your breath now, barely audible. A rhythm of place names, spirits, turns of the terrain. This is what modern anthropologists will later call a songline, and it's basically GPS for a world without writing. You don't just remember where to go, you sing it, step by step, word by word. The melody curls around your bones like wind through dry grass. As you walk, you come upon another group, strangers, but not enemies. They're from the coast, you think. Your people sometimes meet them when the tides are kind. They smell like salt and burnt shells, and one of them carries a string of shiny pearls that catch the light like fish scales. They sit cross-legged and offer you a piece of white clay, something your inland group rarely sees. You trade them a slab of dried bird meat and a few resin-glued stone flakes in return. This is one of the oldest economies on Earth, and you're smack in the middle of it. Long before the Silk Road or spice ships or credit cards, people like you were exchanging ochre, shells, stories, even sacred knowledge across thousands of kilometers. And not just goods, DNA too. This mingling across vast distances keeps your genetic line surprisingly diverse for a so-called isolated population. Historians still argue whether these networks were spontaneous or deeply ritualized, but there's no debate that they worked. Later, under a scrubby grove, you stop to rest with your group. One of the elders, an old woman with teeth like worn pebbles, tells the tale of a creature that lives beneath the red earth, a serpent so large its breath warms the soil. You've heard it before, but tonight her voice carries something heavier, a warning maybe, or just wisdom that's gained texture over the years. You close your eyes, and in the flicker of firelight, the serpent coils behind your lids. It's not frightening. It's familiar, protective even, like the land itself. Dangerous, but never truly cruel. But tomorrow, you'll learn just how fragile that protection really is, because something's been stalking the dry basin you're heading toward. Not a spirit, not a flame, something with flesh. It leaves tracks, wide, circular, each the size of your torso. The elders call it the Thunder Beast. You've never seen one, but your cousin swears he has, and he says it walks low, snorts like a broken tree, and smells like wet dirt and rot. The real name for it, Megalania, a now extinct giant carnivorous lizard. Think Komodo dragon, but longer than a station wagon and with breath like fermented roadkill. It could have lived alongside humans for generations, until, possibly, your ancestors hunted it into memory. You approach the basin cautiously, gripping your spear like it actually stands a chance against something the size of a speedboat. But it's not there, just bones, old ones. You touch a rib that's taller than you. Something about it makes your skin crawl. You don't know why, but you feel watched. Later that night, as the wind picks up and the campfire sputters, you see something move at the edge of the trees. Just a blur, or maybe a shadow. No one else notices, or maybe they pretend not to. You lie back, eyes wide open, listening for the snort. But all you hear is the wind humming through the branches and the distant, almost musical chirp of insects arguing over whose turn it is to annoy you. Still, you sleep. Morning comes with frost at the edges of the tented bark sheets. That's unusual for this time of year, and it sends a shiver through the group. The signs are off. A wallaby was found dead, untouched by predators. A tree that should be blooming sits bare. Something's shifted. Nature's rhythm is hesitating. Historians still debate whether early Australians developed a formalized calendar system. But who needs numbers when you have instincts? You know what's normal. You know this isn't it. So you move again. You're heading toward a known rock shelter, one used by travelers during hard seasons. When you arrive, you realize you're not the first there. Ashes still warm in the hearth. Scratched lines on the rock that weren't there last time. One even resembles a crude map. It's a landscape sketch of the riverbend ahead. But something's wrong. The riverline stops suddenly, as if whoever made it just stopped. You don't like that. Still, your thirst outweighs your fear. You push on, and finally, after what feels like an eternity of heat and dust, you reach the river, or what's left of it. It's shriveled, barely more than a trickle carving through cracked mud. Fish rot in shallow pools. Birds peck listlessly at the sludge. You kneel to scoop water in your hands, but it tastes wrong, metallic and warm, like you're drinking regret. Someone mentions Lake Mungo again, how even big waters can vanish if the land wants them gone. You wonder if this is the same story, playing out all over again. But then, under a twisted tree branch, you spot something odd. A stone with carvings, not art, but marks. Counted lines, like someone was keeping time. You trace them. 13 vertical lines, a crosshatch, then a blank space. The counting ends. A chill runs down your back. Maybe it's just the wind, or maybe it's the echo of someone else, someone long gone, who realized, right here, that they were the last of their group. You don't say anything. You tuck the stone back into the mud where you found it. You walk on. Above, the sky shifts again. No clouds, no birds, just that impossible blue pressing down like a hand. You tell yourself the thunder beast is just a story. You tell yourself the serpent still watches over you. You tell yourself the land always provides. And then you whisper a new verse of the songline, one you've never sung before, because this land keeps changing. And if you want to survive, your story has to change with it. The next morning tastes like dust. It clings to your tongue, lines your throat, seeps into your dreams even before you open your eyes. You wake slowly, blinking at the jaundiced sky. There's a strange yellow tint to everything, like the sun is bleeding through stained glass. You sit up and rub your face, feeling the crackle of dried clay across your cheeks. It's not paint, it's just the air. You've slept in a bowl of earth. Everyone moves slower today. Your knees ache. The elders are murmuring to each other, casting glances at the hills. You hear the word drying. Not just the river, not just the plants, the air, the land itself. Even the animals have started to vanish. No tracks this morning. No distant grunts or yips or the telltale scratching of claws. Just silence. And silence is always louder when it's unnatural. You hike toward a known waterhole. It's meant to be deep and cool year-round, tucked under a sandstone overhang. When you arrive, it's empty. The cracked bottom glints with old fish bones and a half-buried turtle shell. Someone, maybe from another clan, etched symbols into the wall nearby. Spirals, arrows, a crude drawing of a human with its arms raised, palms open. A warning? A prayer? Historians still argue whether these carvings had singular meanings or layered interpretations passed through generations. But you can feel it. This one isn't joy. It's despair with its arms in the air. You scrape a trickle of moisture from the shaded rock and let it fall into your cupped palm. It tastes like old moss and sorrow. The group makes camp here anyway. You set up under a crooked tree that still has a few yellowing leaves. The elder with the gravel voice starts singing again. This time a song you don't know. It's slow, halting, almost reluctant, like she's remembering it from someone else's mouth. It tells of fire from the sky, not lightning, something bigger. A stone that falls, a wave of heat, a wall of dust. The others go quiet. You've heard bits of this story before. Some say it's about the time before people. Others say it happened only a few lifetimes ago. A glowing sky, a booming sound, and then hunger, cold. The plants die, the animals flee, people scatter, some don't return. Fringe researchers will someday speculate this story refers to a real event. A comet impact, perhaps, or a meteor explosion in the atmosphere. Maybe even the cause of the megafauna extinctions. The timing kind of fits. But who knows? Science pokes at bones. You carry the memory in song. That night, the air turns sharply cold. Not a breeze, just still, unnatural chill. The kind that makes you pull your possum skin tighter, an inch closer to the fire, until your eyelashes feel singed. You curl up near a mound of heated stones and try to sleep, but the dreams return. This time, it's not the one Jinnah. It's a wall of flame, moving backward, not consuming, erasing. In the dream, you try to outrun it, but your legs sink into the ground like it's molasses. You scream, but your voice comes out as smoke. You wake coughing, eyes burning. Not a dream, actual smoke. The tree you slept under has caught fire. Everyone scrambles, coughing and shouting. You grab your ember pouch, somehow still intact, and flee with the others down toward the rocky outcrop. The fire is small, containable, but fast. The leaves above combust with a soft woof, like a breath from a dragon's nose. You stomp and slap at embers, and after what feels like an hour, the blaze subsides. No one talks about it, but you can see it in their eyes. This wasn't normal. Trees don't spontaneously burst into flames. Not without help. Maybe lightning in the night, maybe an ember caught in the bark, or maybe the serpent's patience is running thin. By sunrise, you've moved on. And then something strange happens. You crest a ridge and find green. A valley carpeted in soft, young grass. The trees are stunted, but alive. A shallow creek still flows, and in it, frogs bellow lazily, unconcerned with your presence. One of the kids laughs for the first time in days and jumps in, splashing wildly. You stand there, dumbfounded, as if you've walked into another world. You drop to your knees and drink until your stomach cramps. The group spreads out, cautious but grateful. You gather seeds, dig for roots, even spot a goanna sunning itself on a flat rock. It scampers away, and nobody gives chase. Not today. Today is for breathing. Later, as you help build a temporary shelter, you notice something else. A series of raised mounds at the base of the hill. Not natural, not random. Aligned. Someone's lived here before. Long ago, but not ancient. You poke at the soil. Charcoal fragments. Bits of stone tools. A worn bead made from a kangaroo tooth. You hold it up and squint at it in the sunlight. A tiny hole drilled through the top. Someone wore this. You wonder where they went. Did they die here? Move on? Did the Green Valley eventually turn brown and brittle? Or did they too think they'd finally escaped the curse of Australia's prehistoric roulette? That night, as you lie under a sheet of stars, you spot something odd in the sky. A slow-moving, silent streak of light. Too smooth for a falling star, too steady for a bird. It vanishes behind the clouds. You blink. Maybe it was nothing. But it leaves a taste in your mouth like metal and wonder. The elders don't speak of it. But the old woman hums again, that same slow tune. You hum with her this time, because somewhere inside you know the safety here is temporary. Every lush valley has an expiration date. Every green has its fire. Still, for tonight, your fire burns clean, and your water runs cool. And that, for now, is enough. The sun wakes you like it's been watching all night. Not gently, not like it used to. It climbs over the horizon with a harshness that feels almost personal. The valley that cradled you in green just yesterday already looks a shade paler, like a dream receding into memory. You stand, bones creaking, and stretch as a warm breeze slips through the trees. Something smells. Off, not smoke, not rot. Something more ancient, like a rock sweating secrets. Breakfast is silent. The mood has shifted again. One of the elders, the one with the cracked thumbnail and a voice like crunching bark, mutters about the stillness. You glance around. No birdsong, no insect hum, not even a distant dingo howl. Just the sound of the wind slapping leaves that no longer care to respond. You set out. The decision is quiet but mutual. The valley won't last. You've seen it before. Everything flourishes, just for a moment, like a breath held between disasters. You move east. The soil turns gritty. Sandy patches interrupt the scrub. Then, hours later, like a curtain pulled back from the earth itself, it opens into a shimmering plain. Red, flat, endless. Welcome to the Pleistocene heart of Australia's interior. Or, in modern terms, the outback before it had a marketing department. This place doesn't want you. It tolerates your presence the way a crocodile tolerates a bird on its snout. You step softly. As you walk, someone finds a tooth. Huge. Fossilized. The ridges are serrated like a stone saw. It belonged to something big, probably a thylacoleo, the so-called marsupial lion. Not a real lion, of course. More like a meat-powered bear-cat-koala hybrid with bone-crushing jaws. Imagine being stalked by a predator that looks like a stuffed toy having a bad acid trip. You keep walking. A few kilometers on, you pass a circle of blackened stones. Not natural. Once a hearth, long since abandoned. Someone sat here, someone cooked, maybe told a joke that got lost in the sand. One of the younger walkers points out that the stones are magnetic. They tug slightly on a bone needle. A curious property, maybe due to a lightning strike, or something else. Historians still debate whether early humans understood magnetism, or if they simply noticed when things felt strange. You move on. The days blur. At one point, a dust storm rears up from the north. You huddle in a dry creek bed, heads wrapped in cloaks, eyes squinting through slits. The storm howls like an ancestor trying to shout through centuries. You don't respond. You just wait. When it passes, everything looks older, bleached, worn. Even the rocks seem embarrassed by how naked they've become. You reach what appears to be a stone arrangement. Lines of rocks forming rough geometric shapes. Circles, a triangle, even a line that points to the rising sun. Someone calls it sacred. Someone else calls it navigational. You call it eerie. You touch one of the stones and find it warm. Not from the sun, from within. That night, under a flat sky, the elder tells another story. This one's about a great famine, not the absence of food, but the death of knowing how to find it. A story of a clan that wandered so far, they forgot which plants were safe, which animals were sacred, and which caves held water. They starved, surrounded by plenty. You don't realize until much later that this story isn't about the past. It's a warning, and maybe a prophecy. The next day, you stumble upon something unexpected. A tree with a carved hole in its trunk, smooth from years of use. Inside, a narrow ledge holds a bundle wrapped in bark. You unwrap it, hands trembling. Bones, human, tiny, a child, carefully buried, carefully hidden. There's a single ochre-painted shell beside the skull. Maybe a talisman, maybe a farewell. You rewrap it and step back. Everyone's quiet. There's nothing to say. You keep walking. You spot mirages on the horizon now, rippling shapes that suggest water, forests, even entire cities. They vanish when you blink. The heat plays tricks on tired minds. A few days later, you find tracks. Fresh ones. Not human, not dingo. Large, heavy, three-toed, too wide to be kangaroo, too defined to be emu. They go in a long, curving line across the sand, disappearing over a dune. You don't follow. That night, the dreams return. The fire's gone out, but you still feel heat on your chest. In the dream, you're lying on stone. The stars are gone. There's a sound like grinding teeth, and something watching. Not threatening, just waiting. You wake with your mouth full of grit and your palms sweating. The elder is already awake, staring out across the desert. You felt it too, she says. You nod. Later, One of the teens claims to have seen a light on the horizon. Not fire, not moonlight, something pulsing, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Maybe it's a trick of the heat, maybe not. That morning, you stumble across a cracked slab of rock, partially buried. You dig with your hands until your nails split. What you uncover looks almost architectural. Flat, square edges, unnatural angles. Someone jokes that it's a UFO landing pad. But the elder doesn't laugh. She says the land remembers everything, even the things we're not supposed to. You don't know what she means. Not yet, but you will. Because the next stretch of land will test you in ways no predator ever could. Not with teeth or claws. With memory. With silence. And with the weight of knowing you were never supposed to make it this far. But somehow, you have. And that's the unluckiest thing of all. You don't feel it at first. The shift is subtle, like stepping onto a rug that isn't quite flat. The ground becomes firmer, the sand giving way to tightly packed clay. Cracks spread across the surface like a puzzle missing too many pieces. No grass grows here. No shrubs dare. You look around and realize you've entered what will one day be called a gibber plane. But to you, it's just a broken mirror of Earth, reflecting nothing but your own confusion. The air grows heavier. Not hotter, just thicker, more deliberate. Like the land is pressing down on your chest without touching you. You breathe through your mouth, but the dust sticks to your tongue like velvet. The kind that coats museum exhibits no one's looked at in years. One of your group, the boy with the chipped tooth and constant hiccups, starts complaining about headaches. Another stares too long at the horizon, eyes wide and unfocused. You stop. Rest. Drink the last of the water from a carved emu eggshell. It tastes like regret and sun-baked clay. Then, under a stone overhang, you find them. Skeletons. 2 adults, 1 child. Not arranged with care. Scattered, sun-bleached, half-buried. The bones have been gnawed, not by scavengers, not cleanly. They were cracked, smashed open, marrow sucked dry. You all pretend not to notice, but the silence grows louder. Someone starts humming, an old tune about rivers that no longer exist. Later that day, you find something that feels even more cursed. A ring of stones, carefully placed. Inside it, not ash, but bone dust. Finely ground, almost like flour, mixed with ochre. One of the elders kneels, touches a fingertip to the center, sniffs it. Doesn't say a word. Historians still argue about the ritual use of remains, whether early Australians practiced sky burials, cremations, or some lost funerary tradition. But this is something different, something forgotten on purpose. You move on quickly. The terrain shifts again. Hills rise, rust-colored and crumbling. You pass a rock face streaked with mineral veins that glitter in the light like fossilized lightning. The path narrows. You enter what feels like a canyon, but the walls are low, no more than shoulder height, and lined with petroglyphs, spirals, animal shapes, stars, and then a map. You trace the symbols with your fingers, a central point, marked with concentric circles, radiating lines, arrows, dots. It's too deliberate to be random. Could this be a map to water, or shelter, or something far less comforting? A fringe theory, whispered by late-night researchers in climate-controlled offices centuries later, suggests that some of these ancient carvings encode migratory data, star maps, food cycles, even celestial warnings. But there's no consensus. The rock doesn't explain itself. You camp nearby. The wind picks up. It whistles through the canyon like a flute played by the bones of the earth. You barely sleep. When you rise, your legs ache. Your eyes feel full of smoke. There is no fire. And yet, everything smells burned. As the group moves on, you pass a massive boulder balanced improbably on a narrow pillar. The sight is unsettling, not because it's unstable, but because it clearly hasn't moved in centuries. It's wrong in the way only something ancient and untouched can be. You glance back and see a shape on the rock that wasn't there a moment ago. A shadow, vaguely human, tall, unmoving. You blink, and it's gone. No one else mentions it. Around midday, the boy with the hiccups collapses. He isn't breathing right. His lips are dry, his skin hot. Heat stroke. One of the older walkers chews a bitter root, spits it into a pouch, mixes it with water, and dribbles it into his mouth. You wait. You wait for hours. He finally stirs. You all breathe again. There are moments like this where you almost believe in grace, in luck. But then you remember where you are, when you are, and realize that surviving isn't mercy. It's just temporary. In the distance, the land opens again, but not into grass or bush, into salt. A blinding expanse of white that stretches to the horizon, flat, dry, terrifying. Lake Eyre, though you don't call it that, is a place of ghosts. It was once a thriving inland sea. Now it's a shimmering trap. If it rains, which it almost never does, the lake fills and becomes a paradise. Frogs explode from the dirt. Birds migrate en masse. Everything blooms. But most of the time, it's just a mirage with a mean sense of humor. You edge around it. Days blur again. Food grows scarce. The roots you dig taste more bitter. The grubs squirm less. The sky becomes a blank canvas, offering no signs, no hints. Just pale blue boredom. You miss clouds. You miss the smell of wet leaves. You even miss the scream of cockatoos. Then, out of nowhere, a burst of color. A single patch of bright purple flowers, clustered around a crack in a rock. The smell is sweet and strange. You touch the petals, and they collapse into dust. Still, it's something. A gift. Maybe a joke. Maybe both. That night, the stars return. Bright and wild, like they're trying to escape the sky itself. You lie awake, staring up, tracing constellations that don't yet have names. One of them looks like a serpent chasing a man, another like a hand reaching out of the sea. The elder beside you points to one and says, "That one never rises before bad things come." You ask what kind of bad things. She just shrugs. All kinds. You close your eyes and dream of water, not rain, not rivers, a wall of it, crashing, roaring, dragging trees like twigs and wiping the land smooth. You wake up wet, not from rain, from sweat, but the dream lingers, like a memory you haven't made yet. You wake up to a sound you almost forgot, wind whispering through something soft. Not sand, not rock, but leaves. Actual, honest-to-dreamtime greenery. It doesn't last long. Just a narrow band of scrub hugging the edge of what feels like a dry riverbed, possibly once a tributary of the ancient Lake Eyre. You don't know the names, not the ones geologists will one day carve into atlases. You just know when the earth remembers water. You kneel, dig, feel the soil crumble like stale cake. Nothing beneath, not even moisture. The shrubs survive by the skin of their roots and the mercy of underground aquifers that haven't been tapped dry. Yet, you chew a leaf out of habit. It's bitter, makes your tongue buzz. You swallow anyway. The group moves cautiously now. Every direction feels wrong. The sun no longer tells time. It just judges you from above. The moon hasn't shown her face in days. Only the stars remain constant, though even they seem to shimmer with pity. You pass through a patch of cracked ground that looks like dried blood from above. Iron oxide staining the earth in jagged webs. It's beautiful, in a hostile way. Someone stubs their toe and curses under their breath. You pretend not to hear the wet click of bone. A few kilometers on, you spot smoke. Thin, distant, not black like fire. White. A cooking signal maybe, or a funeral. You can't tell. You detour, against your better judgment. Curiosity is dangerous out here, but so is routine. You find them. Another group. They look like you. Worn, sun-torched, hollow-eyed. But they're not. You realize it instantly in the way they hold themselves. Strangers with history you don't share. One of them wears a necklace made of crocodile teeth and emu feathers. Another paints their face with symmetrical lines. You approach slow, hands raised, palms empty. Words are exchanged. Old words, twisted cousins of your own. Enough to grasp their meaning. They've come from the West, fled something they can't explain. Their land turned to glass, fires that lit the night sky without smoke, soundless thunder. Historians still debate whether early Aboriginal Australians witnessed natural meteor strikes or volcanic activity in the deep interior. Some claim the legend's a metaphor, others whisper that they saw something truly rare, events we still struggle to explain today. They invite you to sit. You share food, if you can call it that. Crushed witchetty grubs, soaked in charcoal water. It's like chewing wet chalk dipped in protein powder. You eat every bite. One of their elders, a woman with deep eyes and a jaw like stone, tells a story. It's not just a tale, it's a warning. About a sky beast that fell to earth in flames and broke the land into pieces. About rivers that ran backward. About stars that blinked out one by one. Everyone laughs nervously. No one disbelieves her. You sleep among them, restless. The ground feels wrong, like it's holding its breath. You wake several times, convinced someone is watching. But it's just rocks. Probably. The next morning, they gift you a talisman, a disc of polished stone carved with concentric spirals. It's cool to the touch, and when you hold it to your ear, you swear you hear wind, even when the air is still. They call it the listening stone. You tie it to your belt. You don't know why, but it feels useful, or maybe just comforting. You part ways at midday. No one says goodbye. You simply start walking in different directions. You move northeast now, toward where they said there's water. Not much, just enough. As you climb a rise, you spot what they spoke of. A distant glint, a silvery shimmer in a low basin. It takes 2 days to reach it. When you finally do, you realize the shine was false. Not water, salt. A crust so thick it crunches like bones beneath your feet. But nearby, in a depression shaded by a cracked monolith, there's a trickle, just a stain in the stone. You lick the dampness. It's real, not clean, but not death either. You camp. At dusk, the wind returns, bringing with it a sound you haven't heard in weeks. Frogs. Tiny, creaky-voiced frogs that somehow buried themselves deep enough to outlive the fire, the famine, the salt. They croak in defiance. You feel oddly proud of them. You sleep better that night. Not well, but better. You dream of people dancing, hundreds, maybe thousands, spinning in rhythm around a glowing fire. But the fire is wrong. It's cold, it burns blue, and the dancers have no shadows. You wake to find the listening stone humming faintly against your side. You don't tell anyone. You just walk. The next few days blur again. You traverse areas dotted with upright stones. Megaliths, though you don't know the word. Some lean, some are carved. Some form tight corridors. They weren't placed by accident. They're arranged to mark something. Solstices, migrations, ritual, or graves. No one agrees. Not now. Not then. You touch one. It hums faintly under your fingers. Or maybe that's just the wind. Eventually, you crest a ridge and see a new horizon. Green. Actual green. Not the stubborn kind that clings to survival, but the lush, wet shimmer of a region that still has its soul intact. A forest. The group breaks into something like joy. It's cautious, of course. You've been tricked before, but this time it feels possible. You descend, and as you do, something ancient stirs beneath the surface of your thoughts. Not a memory, not yet. A pattern, a shape. You can't name it, but you feel it growing. Like the land itself is trying to tell you something important, before you reach the place where even luck can't protect you anymore. The air changes before your eyes do. It goes soft, cool and damp, the way it smells just before a summer storm. You taste moss in the wind and the distant crackle of something alive. Not fire this time, not drought, but movement, real life. You descend into what will later be called the Gondwana remnants, one of the few patches of ancient rainforest that somehow, against all odds, never surrendered. You blink a lot at first. The greens are too loud after so much red. Ferns the size of grown men unfurl like sleepy dancers. Vines dangle from trees whose trunks are older than your entire ancestry. And the canopy, dear stars, the canopy makes you feel like you've stepped under the ribs of some slow-breathing leafy beast. Birdsong returns. Not the harsh, taunting screeches of the bush, but melodic chirps, clicks, almost laughter. You think about laughing yourself, but your body's forgotten how to do it without coughing. The group slows down, not because of exhaustion, but wonder. You dip your hands into a stream and drink. No hesitation. It tastes like stone and sky and things that remember better centuries. Someone finds fruit. It's sour, fuzzy, filled with seeds that crunch like beetles, but you eat it anyway. Someone else finds a grub the size of a finger, pulsing with white fat. She bites it in half and hands you the rest. You smile. You don't know why. It feels earned. And then, as you settle into a rhythm, gathering, drinking, sketching trails in the undergrowth, something shifts again. It's not visual. It's not sound. It's atmosphere. The way your skin prickles before lightning. You step into a clearing and see them. Figures, painted, staring. Etched into a rock face so wide it dwarfs your entire clan. The pigment glows red and white, even in the filtered sun. Stylized humans with elongated limbs, round heads, giant eyes. Some appear to have wings. Others wear headdresses shaped like suns or mushrooms. They're not hunting scenes. They're not stories of birth or rain. These are different, otherworldly. Some believe they're depictions of ancestral spirits. Others insist they're memories of something much older, something visitors left behind. The truth? Historians still argue whether these Wandjina and Mimi figures represent cultural archetypes or close encounters. You stand frozen, trying to make sense of it. A child behind you whispers, "They're watching." You all leave the clearing a little faster than you entered. For the next few days, things feel off. The forest hums, literally. Not just insects or birds, but a low, resonant thrum, barely perceptible but constant, like the breath of the land has deepened. You walk softly. You step around mushrooms that look too perfect. You notice that no one talks much anymore. One evening, during a light rain, you find a circle of stones covered in moss. Inside, a pit filled with charcoal, bone fragments, and the remains of something big, unidentifiable. Not kangaroo, not wallaby. Something with too many vertebrae. A whisper of a theory floats through your mind. What if megafauna hadn't all died off yet? What if one or two had stayed behind, tucked away in the densest pockets of green, waiting to be forgotten? Later, curled under an overhang, you see eyes watching you from the trees. Reflective, too high off the ground. They blink and vanish. No one else sees them, or maybe no one admits to seeing them. You continue onward. By now the group is smaller. Not everyone made it out of the salt. Some wandered, some chose stillness over struggle, but those left are quieter, sharper. You share looks that don't need words. You divide food by intuition. You sleep in a loose circle now, no one in the middle. No one wants to be the center of anything anymore. You reach a hill made entirely of quartz. It shines under moonlight like shattered glass. Painful to climb, but you do. At the summit, you find an arrangement of bones. Fresh. Kangaroo, maybe. Arranged in a star pattern. No sign of human tools. Just there. You pretend you didn't see it. On the descent, you slip. Your leg scrapes open. Blood wells up and trickles down your shin. You wrap it in bark. It stings, but it's clean. Later that night, a soft rain falls, and the scent of eucalyptus coats your dreams. You remember a time before all this. A game you used to play as a child, drawing shapes in the dust, then pretending they were maps to secret worlds. You used to believe if you followed the pattern long enough, you'd find an answer. Or a door. You wake with the distinct sense that you're very close to one. A door. Not a real one, of course. There are no hinges in the forest, but a threshold. A boundary. You step through it that afternoon. Not physically. There's no dramatic curtain of vines, no sudden cliff edge, but you feel it in your bones. The way your heart slows down, the way time stretches. The place you enter feels ancient, and not in the usual way. Not in the way that most of Australia is ancient. This feels like a place that even time avoids. The trees here don't creak, the birds don't sing. Even your breath feels muffled. You find a tree shaped like a spiral. Its bark twists as it climbs, coiling upward like smoke frozen in midair. Beneath it, a small mound, deliberate, marked with a stone etched in symbols you don't recognize. One symbol matches the listening stone at your belt. You sit beside it. You don't know what to do. So you hum a lullaby your mother used to sing. A nonsense tune with no meaning, only comfort. The wind joins in. Or maybe something else does. You leave a small offering, a feather, a carved bone, a strand of hair. It feels right. The forest watches and lets you go. You step out of the forest's hush and find yourself on open ground once more, though nothing about this place feels familiar. The air is tinged with the echo of voices you haven't heard yet, but somehow know. You pause, eyes closed, as a soft hum drifts on the breeze. It's not the insect chorus you left behind. It's a melody, layered and looping, like a river of sound carving its way through time. You realize instantly, this is song, Dreamtime song. The oral epics that have outlasted empires. You follow the hum, moving almost unconsciously, until you come to a shallow cave mouth. Inside, the walls are smooth and curved, shaped by wind and water across eons. Your fingers brush over old ochre stains, reminders of the paintings you saw before. But these marks are different. Not pictograms or wandering spirits, but lines and crescents arranged in patterns you sense rather than see. They pulse with the rhythm you've been hearing. You step into the cave and the song envelops you. It's a tale of creation, the rainbow serpent's first emergence, the carving of riverbeds, the shaping of mountains from the serpent's coils. You recognize snippets, remember the dancing rainbow, carry the water in your heartbeat, phrases your people taught you centuries ago. A mainstream fact surfaces in your mind. These narratives have been passed down for over 60,000 years and represent one of the world's oldest continuous oral traditions. The air here feels thick with memory. You sit on a smooth stone and lean your back against the cool wall as the story uncoils around you. You don't just listen. The story listens back, weaving threads through your bones. One voice sings of the Mimi spirits, those slender figures you glimpsed in the painted clearing. Another recalls the Wandjina, those star beings etched in red and white. You recall the elder's warning that touching certain images might stir ancient powers. You're glad you kept your distance. In the center of the cave, a shallow depression holds water still enough to reflect the flickering candlelight from your ember bundle. You peer into it and see not your own face, but a panorama. Ghostly dancers spinning around a glowing core of fire. Spears pointed to the sky, voices rising in unison. Fringe theorists will later speculate that this reflection shows past rites, perhaps even alien visitors guiding the rituals. Historians still argue whether such interpretations betray the original intent of the stories, or if they open new layers of meaning, waiting to be rediscovered. Your fingers skim the water and disrupt the image, rippling it into abstraction. You shrug, because understanding here isn't about fixing meaning, it's about letting the story shift you. As you rise, you pat the pocket where you keep the listening stone. It vibrates faintly, attuned to the song that echoes through this place. You pull it out, place it in the water, and watch the ripples carry tiny spirals of color across the surface. Maybe, you think, it's a tuning fork for the land's memory. You leave the stone in the basin. You don't know if it needs it more than you do. Then you step back into the open. Outside, The sun is lowering, and long shadows stretch across the ground like skeletal fingers. With each step you take, fragments of the epic cling to your spirit. The thundering hooves of extinct Genyornis, the cry of the cassowary in the dawn, the hiss of the thunder beast, Megalania, stalking across Gibber Plains. You find yourself humming lines of the song you've never formally learned, but seem to know by heart. This is the power of oral tradition. It embeds itself in your body. A breeze carries the scent of eucalyptus and unseen flowers, and you remember the purple blooms in the salt basin. You smile at the callback, small miracles in a relentless land. You recall the carved spiral tree, the listening stones hum, the blood from your scratched shin. All of these moments are verses in the grand narrative you now carry forward. As night falls, you settle near a campfire built of flat stones, arranged in a circle that looks intentionally ordered, like the bone star patterns you saw on the quartz hill. Sparks spiral upward and melt into the dark sky. You imagine the ancestors gathered here, passing the torch, both literal and metaphorical, from hand to hand, song to song. You decide to test your memory. You begin with the opening lines of the epic, a soft intonation, then rising in confidence. The firelight catches the ember of your voice as it echoes off the surrounding rocks. A few of the younger ones lean in, eyes bright. The elders exchange silent nods. Your song pulses through the campsite, weaving the group together. You feel the hum of the Dreamtime lineage vibrating through you all. Later, as the fire embers dim, you lie back and stare up at the Milky Way, that great river of stars. In their depths, you see shapes you recognize from the cave's walls. The serpent sprawls across the sky. The emu stands tall before it. You breathe slowly, letting sleep wash over you with the comfort of a lullaby. Yet, even as you drift, one question tugs at your waking mind. How many more sections of this vast story remain unwritten? How many epics lie hidden in rock shelters yet to be discovered? And where will your own verse end? For now, you let those questions rest. You drift with the ancestral song, carried on the wind, into the longest sleep you've ever known. The stories will continue without you, but your song, your breath, remains part of their eternal chorus. You wake to a distant rumble, quiet at first, like your own heartbeat amplified across miles. You sit up, chest tight, and listen. It isn't the creek you drank from, nor the night wind rattling the camp. It's deeper, older, like the earth itself is sighing. You rise and step away from the fire's dying glow, peering east toward the horizon. There, a dim glow. Not the sun, not a campfire, but something far more ominous. You've heard legends passed down in song of a mountain that belched fire, of ash skies so thick they blotted out stars. Now you realize those stories weren't just the fancy of old voices. Volcanoes once dotted this land, spitting molten rock and gas into prehistoric skies. Mainstream science will one day pinpoint one of the youngest in Australia, the Mount Gambier crater volcano, that last roared to life some 5,000 years ago. Historians still argue whether local Dreamtime tales record that very event, or if they blend memories of multiple eruptions into a single epic. You squint at the glow, wondering if you're witnessing an echo of that ancient fury. You trudge toward the color in the sky, sand crunching underfoot. The air tastes faintly of sulfur, a metallic tang that turns your stomach. The firelight of your camp has long since died, but in its place, the horizon pulses red and orange as though the continent is bleeding light. Somewhere ahead, a volcano wakes. When you arrive at the crater's lip, though you don't know the word crater, you find a circle of scorched earth and blackened boulders. The heat radiates in waves, bending the very air. You hold a hand out but pull it back when you feel the rush of hot steam. Tiny drops of ash drift down, like grey snowflakes settling on your hair. You brush them off without thinking. A booming crack echoes from within the crater. You stumble, heart hammering. Your hand finds the listening stone at your belt. It vibrates like a trapped snake. You place it on a rock. The stone hums, resonating with the molten churn below. You can't tell if it's comforting or condemning. A soft joke escapes your lips despite the danger. Well, at least we won't have to worry about the thunder beast today. The others force a laugh, but you know it's hollow. Even a dormouse-sized volcano could block out the sun and send your world into darkness for months. You back away, ash crunching beneath your feet, and begin the long walk southward toward the coast. You need fresh water, shelter, anything that feels alive and willing to share its bounty. The ash follows you like a petulant child, dusty, clinging, impossible to shake. 3 days later, you crest a low ridge and see the ocean. A ribbon of silver under the thinning clouds. Relief floods you so deeply your knees buckle. You tumble down the slope, laughing and crying both. You taste the salt spray on your lips before you even reach the shoreline. But the beach isn't what you expect. Instead of soft sand, you find walls. Rocky ledges rimmed with barnacles and seaweed. The rise and fall of the tide have carved a natural stairway, each step slick and sharp. You look back at the sea and realize it's not just the ocean, it's an ancient barrier, one that once kept inland waters at bay when sea levels surged. Mainstream geologists will one day map these raised beaches around Australia's coasts, evidence of sea levels that, at the height of the last interglacial period some 125,000 years ago, stood several meters higher than today. Historians still argue whether these terraces were noticed and recorded in oral traditions or simply overlooked as the land continued its slow rebound. But here they are, like the continent's memory carved in stone. You pick your way down the ledges, each step a prayer. The water rushes in with surprising force, nudging your feet almost playfully. You wade into the shallows and scoop up a handful of salt water. It's cold, bracing, a rebirth for your parched throat. Behind you, the cliffs stand silent as sentinels, watching over this meeting of land and sea. You spend the night huddled in a sea cave, listening to the rhythmic crash of waves. You hum a lullaby, half remembered, half improvised, and watch the listening stone glow faintly in your hand, as if attuned not just to land, but to water's pulse too. In the dark, you dream of falling stars, great fireballs blazing across the sky, splitting open the night with thunderous roars. You wake with your heart pounding and realize it wasn't a dream. Above you, the heavens still rain shooting stars, a reminder of countless meteors that have struck this land. One of the most famous will be the Hembury craters in the Northern Territory, 13 impact sites formed around 4,700 years ago. Some elders will one day claim to recall the sky cracking open in a single fiery night. Historians still debate whether oral stories of fire devils correspond to those strikes, or if they're poetic inventions born of multiple celestial events. You trace a line in the sand, imagining where the largest meteor must have landed. A crater nearly a kilometer wide, enough to send shockwaves through your ancestors' campsites, enough to seed legends of angry gods hurling fire. You scoop up a fistful of grains, white, black, and red mixed together like a mosaic, and let them slip through your fingers. In the morning, you depart at low tide, following the coastline that curves eastward. You pass tidal pools filled with life, starfish, shellfish, slippery sea cucumbers. For a moment, you forget the volcano, the ash, the salt terraces. You nibble on mussels, wash them down with fresh seawater. You laugh at the irony of sipping the very thing you later learn is no good for drinking. But right now, it feels like victory. You climb the raised beach once more and gaze inland. The land looks calmer here, kinder somehow. You see low hills that promise fresh springs, forests hidden beyond the horizon. The ocean's roar fades into the background. You find yourself humming the Dreamtime epic again, fragments of the creation song intertwined with new verses about fire, ash, salt, and stone. As you walk toward what you hope is sanctuary, you carry more than just your meager belongings. You bear witness to fire from the earth, fire from the sky, and the tides of an ever-changing sea. Each has left its mark on this land, and on you. You feel the weight of those forces anchored in your bones, reminding you that survival here demands more than tools and songs. It demands humility before a world that, at any moment, can reshape itself. You pause at a promontory overlooking a sheltered bay. The sun glints off the water like a promise. You set your pack down and take a deep breath, tasting salt, ash, and something new: hope. Not that the journey's end is near, but that you've endured yet another chapter of a land that refuses to be tamed. Because here, on the cusp of sea and stone, you understand that life is neither conquest nor surrender. It's adaptation, and you, like all who came before and those yet to come, are part of that endless, evolving story. You shoulder your spear and step forward. You wait to the sound of water lapping against rock. Not a roaring ocean, but the gentle tick of a tide moving in and out, like the breathing of the world itself. You blink, groggy with sleep, and realize you're camped on a tiny spit of sand at the edge of a bay. Behind you, low cliffs rise studded with fossilized shells, evidence that, not so long ago in geological time, this place was underwater. Mainstream geology will one day show that between 18,000 and 7,000 years ago, sea levels rose by over 120 meters, drowning coastal plains and carving those raised beaches you walked yesterday. Historians still argue whether Aboriginal oral traditions remember this drowning, or merely mythologize it as the rainbow serpent's tears. But you remember it as salt on your lips and sand under each toe, every tide brushing away yesterday's footprints. You stretch out, wincing as your back pops, a reminder that no matter how soft the sand, sleeping on it is a kind of primitive Pilates. A small joke you share with the sea breeze that smells faintly of fish guts and eucalyptus. You rise and survey the coastline, natural stone terraces scalloped by wave action, tidal pools like glassy eye sockets, and in the far distance, a low peninsula disappearing into heat haze. Your first task: check for food. You skirt the waterline, looking for limpets clinging to rock faces. You pry them loose with a sharp stone, briny, chewy morsels that crackle slightly when you bite down, like popcorn telling you it's annoyed. You swallow them anyway. Protein is protein. As you eat, you notice pebbles polished to a pastel sheen by waves, pink, green, white, all smoothed by the ocean's slow massage. You pocket one for a future story, imagining how someday someone will hold it and wonder why you carried it across the continent. Further along, you find an inlet where the tide has left behind a shallow lagoon. Tiny fish dart beneath your feet. Sea cucumbers cling to rocks like fat, lazy caterpillars. You scoop water in your hand and drink. It's brackish, but it burns pleasantly, like a hot toddy made by a sunbathing bartender. A light quip escapes you. At least I won't get scurvy with this diet. The joke lands on nobody but seagulls. The cliffs behind you bear scratch marks, vertical grooves gouged by ancient waves during the last high stand. Some grooves are ankle height, others reach your shoulders. It's a strange kind of timeline written in stone, mapping the ocean's revenge on dry land. You trace the highest mark and imagine a world where you'd have to swim to get water. You shudder, then laugh at your own dramatic flair. You're not that bad a swimmer. You turn inland to find fresh water. The peninsula forms a natural windbreak, so crevices between rocks trap rain. You scramble up a low slope and find a depression in a boulder where rainwater pools. It's your own rooftop cistern, gravity fed by storms that fell weeks ago. As you kneel to drink, your reflection ripples in the brown water. You, tired, wild-haired, with eyes that have seen too many horizons. You scoop a handful into your mouth and grit your teeth. The taste is mossy, gritty, sweet in an alien way. But it's life. There's a rock ledge above that pool, carved smooth by both wind and human hands. Ochre stains linger in grooves, handprints, animal tracks, and a series of wavy lines you recognize as another songline, one that follows the coastline like a musical map. You press your palm to the print, feeling warmth that's not there. A voice in your head whispers fragments. Follow where the water kisses the sky. You tuck that phrase into your mind for later. You push on, hopping down the rocky steps and following a narrow valley between two low hills. The ground shifts from sand to pebbles to hard-packed clay. Thorny shrubs scrape at your ankles, and you curse them, then stop yourself, whispering, "Sorry, you're just doing your job." One of the bushes drops a single red berry at your feet. You pick it up, examine it. It looks poisonous, but curiosity wins. You nibble. It's mild, vaguely sweet, with a tingle that sets your tongue on edge. Not lethal, not delicious, useful. You spit the rest into your palm and offer it to a passing lizard who ignores you. Fair enough. As you near the head of the bay, the valley narrows into a gorge, its walls carved with wave-cut notches from when the sea stood higher. You step carefully, balancing on narrow ledges as the rocky walls rise on either side. In the dappled shade, you see tiny ferns and moss, plants that have clung here since the last glacial maximum. It's like stepping into an ancient greenhouse, earth breathing damp and cool. You pause to brush a fern frond, feeling each delicate leaflet tickle your fingers. A singular sensation after months of dust and heat. Historians still argue whether pockets of rainforest persisted along parts of Australia's east coast during the height of aridity, or if they were entirely renewed after wetter climates returned. You don't argue, you just breathe it in, letting the dampness crawl into your lungs like a gift. Suddenly, the gorge opens to a waterfall, a small cascade spilling into a shaded pool. The water is clear and cold and alive. You strip off your clothes and plunge in, gasping as the chill shocks your system. Under the surface, you see fish scurrying away, oblivious to your intrusion. You swim beneath the falls, letting the falling water massage your shoulders like nature's chiropractor. Emerging, you feel renewed. The salt and ash of the past weeks wash off you in one cleansing moment. You splash your face, then sit on a rock to dry in the filtered light. You trace the ripple patterns in the water, each concentric ring a gentle echo of the larger tides beyond. Above the pool, the cliff face is pitted with small alcoves where people once sheltered. You can almost see them. Ancestors huddled here, sheltering from storms or sun, drawing symbols of waves and fish. You spot faint red ochre drawings, a simple fish shape, a line of dots, a zigzag representing water. A quirky tidbit. Some rock art researchers will later suggest that these fish images predate similar motifs in European caves by millennia, hinting at parallel human creativity. Historians still argue whether the water symbols represent actual tides, floods, or mythic floods sent by ancestral spirits. But to you it's clear, water is both sustenance and story. You gather around the pool and prepare a simple meal of shellfish and grubs you roasted on smouldering stones. The fire smells of wet smoke and earth, a welcome contrast to the campfire ash of the desert. You chew thoughtfully, tasting the land's generosity. That night, you nestle under the rocky overhang, listening to the waterfall's lullaby. You hum a verse of the songline tuned to the water's rhythm. The bones of ancient sea creatures scattered in the sand behind you seem to vibrate in time. You close your eyes, imagining how the tide once reached this very ledge, erasing footprints like a cosmic eraser. You dream of water rushing through stone corridors, of ancestors wading through newly flooded valleys, of stars reflected twice, in sky and in water, melding both into one. You wake at dawn to a symphony of frogs, the kind that only emerge when water is abundant. Their croaks fill the gorge like a choir. You rise, brush the dew from your shoulders, and pack your few belongings. You wrap the listening stone in a leaf and tuck it safely into your pouch. You take one last look at the waterfall, the tide-marked walls, the ferns, the fish darting below. Then you step out of the gorge, back into the sunlit world, where the coast curves away and the landscape is waiting to write the next verse of your journey. You step out of the gorge and back into sunlight, and the air feels different. Softer, perhaps, carrying distant sounds that have nothing to do with fire or water. You pause, listening to the faint hum of voices, some accented like the sea, others like the desert's dry breath. It's speech, words, language. You realize you haven't heard real conversation since the bay, the guttural clicks of coastal dialects, the soft sibilance of forest tongues, the clipped rhythms of inland speech. Here, they converge. You share the path with a family group heading south. You don't speak their language, but you share laughter when a child points at your red, clay-streaked face and squeals. You pantomime. They pantomime back. You feast on roasted shellfish together, using stones as plates. The youngest presses a soft shell against your ear, an impromptu listening stone, and you hear the rush of your heartbeat blending with the tide's echo. You smile. This meeting is more than social. It's proof of a fractured tapestry of tongues. Mainstream scholars will one day count over 250 Aboriginal languages spread across the continent by the time of European contact, many descending from these early dialect splinters. Historians still argue whether that diversity sprung from rapid cultural radiation after initial colonization or from gradual drift in relative isolation. Listening to these travelers, you sense both truth and tension. Each group carries its own songlines, myths, and taboos, a living puzzle more intricate than any stone map. As you journey together, you notice how small differences tip into misunderstandings. A word for waterhole, pronounced one way, could mean dangerous hole in another tongue. A gesture blessing rain might curse a stranger's harvest. You tread carefully, smiling and nodding, relying on the universal language of shared need, hunger, thirst, firelight. You swap a handful of mussel shells for some dried goanna meat, trading not just food but stories. They mimic the call of a cassowary. You imitate the howl of a dingo, and everyone laughs when you add an impromptu kazoo-like trill by blowing through a hollow reed. After parting ways, you find yourself humming fragments of their songs, odd intervals that feel out of place in your usual melodies. You tuck them into your memory alongside your own clan's verses, weaving new threads into the tapestry of your mind. Each accent, each inflection leaves its mark, shaping how you think, how you dream. Further on, you discover a patch of ground imprinted with footprints, too small for an adult, too deliberate for a child alone. A group must have danced here, stamping in a tight circle. Around the prints, someone carved symbols, wavy lines, concentric circles, a shape like a hand with only 4 fingers. A fringe interpretation suggests these carvings are a phonetic script, a precursor to writing. Historians still argue whether any form of proto-writing ever existed in prehistoric Australia, or if these marks merely record ceremony and counting. You run your finger along the grooves, feeling the echoes of laughter and song pressed into stone. That night, you camp under a sky quivering with stars. You attempt to replicate the coastal melody you learned, but it warbles in your throat, twisting into something new, half you, half stranger. You laugh it off, but then pause. Maybe adaptation isn't just about survival. Maybe it's about becoming something different, a hybrid of experiences and voices. In the flickering firelight, you recall the listening stone's hum, the wind's voice in the caves, the drumbeat of waves and frogs. You decide to try something daring. You sing a verse in the coastal tongue you barely know, then answer it with your clan's call and response. The crackle of the fire jumps in time. The nearby cliffs echo back, merging both languages into a single refrain that carries across the campsite. You sit back, heart hammering. For a moment, the world feels a little smaller. An intricately woven web of words, each thread a path to another's story. You fall asleep to the sound of your own doubled voice, a lullaby born of encounter. In the morning, you pack up and move on, but the languages remain. They nestle in your mind, shaping your thoughts like river channels carve valleys. You realize the continent isn't just land and sky. It's a chorus of voices, ever fracturing, ever renewing. And as you step into the next sunrise, you carry more than water and food. You carry words that are not yours, but belong to the land. Each syllable echoes in your chest, a reminder that isolation is an illusion and connection is the true map of survival. You wake to the creak of wood and the hiss of unfamiliar voices, carried on a breeze that smells of salt and tar. At first, you think it's the sea, until you spot sails on the horizon, white wings unfurling against the pale sky. Your heart hammers as you remember the stories passed down in uneasy whispers. outsiders crossing the sea, bringing iron that sings when it cuts, and rifles that roar like thunder beasts but don't need teeth. You've arrived on the edge of what will one day be called the Swan River, though you don't know that yet. To you, it's just a ribbon of water cutting through dusty plains, fringed with reeds that whisper underfoot. The outsiders have set up camp with canvas tents and polished axes, and the air vibrates with their strange language. Clipped consonants, rolled R's, and vowels stretched like lazy lullabies. You don't understand the words, but you feel their intent. "Land grant," one of them says, gesturing to the riverbank as if it belongs to them. You flush, sickened by the assumption, but you know better than to step forward. Instead, you watch from behind a stand of paperbark trees, gripping your sharpened stick like a silent promise. A fringe notion flickers in your mind. Some say that these people might have charted parts of the coast centuries earlier, that Dutch sailors passed by and left marks in cave walls. Mainstream historians still argue whether the Willems etched in faded ochre refer to Dutch mariners or to wandering ancestors dreaming of distant lands. You've seen nothing but rusted nails and broken bottles, no ghost ships carved in stone. But that doesn't mean they weren't here first. As the sun climbs, the newcomers unload crates stamped with symbols you can't decipher. One man pounds a stake into the hard earth, and the ground trembles under the blow of iron. You flinch, as if stung. They erect a makeshift fence and raise a flag you've never seen. A scarlet cross with curious creatures in the corners. You hide your face, tasting bile. This is a warning. They claim ownership of more than land. They claim ownership of stories, rights, even the very songs you carry in your bones. You slip away, following the river's curve, recalling the songline that traces water's edge. It hums beneath your feet, a guide beyond maps and fences. Each chord is a reminder. Water flows where it will, and you flow with it. Further downstream, you encounter small groups of your kin, some curious, others fearful, tentatively trading beads and fishhooks for stolen cloth and metal scalpels that gleam too brightly in your hand. You hold your tongue as your cousin haggles over a copper kettle, bartering using hand signs and shared smiles. Metal sings a weird magic, a knife that never dulls, an axe that splits wood cleanly, a pot that holds water without splintering. You know these will change everything, for better or worse, though historians still argue whether the sudden appearance of tools led to cultural collapse or rapid adaptation. That night, the settlers light fires so bright the stars fade. You lie in ambush under a rocky ledge, listening to their laughter and the stamping of boots. Somehow, these people sleep with the same fire that could burn you alive, yet they feel safe. You wonder if they sense the land's true power, or if they simply don't care. You rise before dawn and approach their camp with an offering, a small fan of dyed feathers and a carved stone disc, the listening stone you've carried since the desert. You place it on a flat rock at the edge of their tents, then retreat into the trees. You wait, pounding heart silent in your chest. In the morning, you find the stone moved. Not far, just nudged. Beside it lies a scrap of paper covered in inked lines. You hold it up, squinting. No words you know. But there's a pattern. Concentric circles, radial lines, dots. A map of sorts, almost identical to the carvings you saw on the quartz hill. You tuck the paper into your belt, heart pounding with wonder and dread. This gesture, this curious collision of worlds, feels like a crossroads. You withdraw upstream, passing fields the settlers have ploughed, channels they've dug to divert the river, saplings bent and broken under iron wheels. You grimace as you remember the crater's hot breath, the salt flats glass, the ash-choked skies. None of those disasters claimed this land so swiftly. This is human fire, human greed, human rewriting of memory. Still, you press on. You follow the river until it widens into an estuary where mangroves clutch at tides, and fish leap through moonlit ripples. Here, you remember a lullaby your mother sang, words about tides that carry messages from the ocean's heart. You hum it softly, and the river seems to respond. A gentle wave lapping your feet, a breeze stirring the mangrove leaves in time with your melody. You set camp among the roots, wary but hopeful, You roast mussels in coals, letting the shells pop open like stories driven by heat. You dip your hands in the briny water and whisper the land's oldest claim. We sing this place into being. A presence emerges, a young settler who's taken an interest in your silent offerings. He wears a coat too heavy for the heat and carries a notebook. He kneels, drawing the listening stone sketch by sketch, then looks up and meets your eyes. There's no fear there, just curiosity, a mirror to your own. He raises a hand in what you take as greeting. You nod. He motions to the estuary and points to the sky, then to his ear, then to his paper. He wants to learn your songline. You hesitate, teach him, and you risk unraveling what you've carried for so long. But you also know that all stories grow when shared. You hum a phrase, a simple melody about the moon's reflection on water. He listens, then imitates it in awkward whistle notes. You smile. Somewhere, centuries ahead, historians will argue whether offering these songs was a gesture of peace or the beginning of assimilation. But in that moment, there is neither settlement nor invasion. Only two beings sharing breath and tune beneath the same sky. You rise, gather your things, and step away, humming the borrowed whistle until it merges with your own chant. You leave the young settler to his sketches and the tangled roots of the mangrove, both of you shaped forever by a fleeting encounter. As you disappear into the paperbark forest, you carry more than beads, maps, or metal. You carry a new verse, one that bridges water's eastward flow and desert's stubborn heart. You carry a vision of stories not confined by fences. And you know, deep in the marrow of your bones, that no amount of iron can cage the land's song. You step beyond the mangroves and find yourself on a plateau of red earth that seems to pulse beneath your feet. There's a wind here, a whispering exhale that carries the echoes of everything you've experienced. You pause and close your eyes, letting the breeze trace the lines on your face like an old friend recounting every story. This is the place where you began, and yet it feels entirely new. The final stretch of the land your people first claimed, the home of every challenge you overcame. You grasp your digging stick and tap it against the ground. The sound resonates, a hollow thunk that reminds you of drum beats in distant caves. You remember the songlines that guided you, the dreamtime epics that shaped your steps, and you hum a fragment under your breath. The refrain of the rainbow serpent carving rivers, the chant of the thunder beast roaming gibber plains, the lullaby of coastal tides. The plateau seems to hum back, an uncanny harmony that sends shivers down your spine. Behind you lies a landscape quilted with scars and blessings. The gibber plains where skeletal reminders whispered warning. The forest where ancient petroglyphs stared unseen. The salt flats that mirrored the sky's cruelty. The volcano's crater that breathed ash. The rocky terraces carved by restless seas. The rainforest's velvet hush. The coast's jagged embrace. And now this high ground, where memory and myth converge. You squat by a clump of desert grass and find, among its roots, a small, smooth pebble. It's green and veined, like a sliver of the rainforest lodged in desert stone. You tuck it into your pouch, a memento of every biome you crossed. Mainstream geology will one day show that this land's aridity fluctuated wildly over time, governed by shifting monsoon patterns and ice age pulses. Historians still argue whether oral narratives about wandering sands directly record those ancient climate swings or simply mythologize them. But you hold the pebble and taste both truths, the scientific rhythms and the songs of your people. A breeze skitters across the plain, lifting dust in lazy spirals. Far off, you spot a termite mound towering like a miniature cathedral. You approach and run a finger along its honeycomb walls. Quirky research will one day note that termite architecture has inspired engineers designing earthquake-resistant structures. It's a small marvel of survival, a monument to collaborative grit. You smile at the symmetry. Humans built songlines to navigate. Termites built towers to regulate temperature, and both strategies endured. You rise and continue to the plateau's edge, where the land falls away into a panorama of ochre ridges and distant hills that fade into the blue haze. You gaze out and whisper a prayer of thanks to the spirits of this place, to the Wandjina that guarded the dream time, the Mimi that danced in hidden clearings, the rainbow serpent that carved your path, and every ancestor who sang you into being. You feel their presence in the wind, the dust, and the sun-warmed stone. Footsteps approach, ghostly soft. You turn to see the faces of your companions emerging from the scrub, some limping, some laughing, all marked in ash and ochre. Their eyes meet yours, and in that glance you share a lifetime of waterholes found and lost, of beasts that hunted you and meals you seized, of languages borrowed and melodies created, of crises weathered and miracles witnessed. You gesture for them to sit, and together you form a loose circle. Someone begins a soft chant, weaving in the coastal whistle you taught the settler, the rainforest hum, the desert tick, and the ocean's crash. Each voice adds a thread, and the song swells into a tapestry of every land you traversed. It's neither your clan's song nor the settler's tune. It's something new, forged from the collisions of place, time, and encounter. Historians still argue whether early Aboriginal music incorporated external influences before European contact. Some claim the traditions remained insular, others point to evidence of trade-driven exchange. But here, under an open sky, you know the truth. Songs survive by evolving. Each verse you add honors the past and claims the future. As the sun dips low, you rise and lead your group down a shallow path etched into the hillside. You descend into an amphitheater of stone where echoes linger, where every voice becomes an ancestral chorus. You speak the final lines, a vow to keep walking, to keep singing, to keep listening, no matter how the land transforms or what new forces arrive. You vow to carry these stories as long as your heart still beats. The last light fades, and you reach the foot of the hill. Behind you, the plateau holds its breath. Ahead, the path continues into darkness. You stand for a moment, feeling the weight of all you've survived. The heat, the drought, the beasts, the storms, the strangers, and the embers of hope. You exhale, and the wind picks up, scattering your breath across the world. You step forward. You find yourself seated by a quiet pool of polished stone, the night sky unfolding above like a velvet tapestry studded with ancient fires. The land has softened its edges, trading harsh scars for gentle shadows. You draw in a slow breath, feeling the rhythm of your heartbeat align with the distant chorus of nocturnal creatures. The subtle rustle of lizards, the hushed croak of frogs, and the echo of insects drifting through cool air. Your shoulders relax, the tension of untold trials slipping away like footprints erased by a gentle tide. You close your eyes and let memory flow like honey, the taste of fresh water beneath ferns, the thrill of a fire-lit sky, the hush of dreamtime songs in hidden caves. Each moment unfolds into the next, a slow unraveling of scenes painted in ochre and emerald, in salt and ash, in sandstone and sea. You sense the ancestors gathering, their presence a quiet comfort threading through your veins. They murmur in lullabies that blur the line between past and present, guiding you into a place of stillness. You whisper a soft thank you to the land, for every lesson, every challenge, every gift wrapped in survival's austerity. Your eyelids grow heavy. Each breath sinks deeper, carrying you toward the gentle shores of sleep. The wind dims to a sigh, and the stars above seem to lean closer, their light a soft caress. The land has told its stories. Now it invites you to rest. You settle back on the cool stone, letting the night cradle you. The last trace of worry drifts away like a feather on the breeze. All is calm. All is gentle. The journey continues, but for now, sleep flows over you, lulling you into a dreamless peace. Sweet dreams.